BitSwap is the hottest new way to trade tokens. Crawling all the top decentralized exchanges, BitSwap will get you the very best price and value for your trades. BitSwap is changing the game. Try it now at bitswapdex.com.
Welcome to Rice TVX and the latest transmission of Stranger Than Fiction. On today's show, I had the honor and privilege of being joined by the legend Clif High for an uncensored conversation about all things woo and current events. Now, aside from being uploaded to my Patreon channel for early access, the only place you're going to find this full interview is on Odyssey and Library. Now, before we get into it, if this just happens to be your first time ever watching any of my videos, I do encourage you to check out and explore my channel. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with my videos as they come out. Also, due to all the recent censorship, make sure you subscribe to my backup channel, Rice TVX2, the sequel. And I've also recently deleted more than half of my videos on my main YouTube channel, which means you can find 100% of my content plus exclusive videos over on Odyssey and Library. If you haven't already, be sure to visit ricetvx.com and sign up for the mailing list so that you never miss an update or new Rice TVX content. You can also find all my social media links as well as merchandise that is coming soon. If you'd like to support the channel directly, consider joining my Patreon, where I have 3 different levels of membership, or if you'd like to send a direct contribution or tip, I have my Cash App information, PayPal, and my CoinTree link for cryptocurrency addresses listed below in the video description. Take advantage of my partnership with Money Metals Exchange. Get your free ½ ounce of silver. All you need to do is be a first-time buyer, visit moneymetals.com, purchase a minimum of $100, and use the promo code RICE. You get that free ½ ounce of silver, and it's another way to support the channel. I will include links down below in the video description for everything I just mentioned, as well as everything that we talk about on today's show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me on today's show is a very special guest. I have the honor and privilege to introduce Mr. Clif High. Now, we're not going to do introductions. I love Clif, and he definitely deserves an introduction, but this is not his thing. We're going to have links down below for his website, his YouTube channel, his BitChute channel, and everything that we talk about on today's episode. So without further ado, Uncle Clif, I really appreciate you accepting my invitation to come on the show. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Doing fine.
And I'm thoroughly looking forward to the conversation. And there'll be a list of videos that I would recommend for people that are unfamiliar with you to check out. Some videos that you recently did with JP from BeyondMystic and some ones that you did on your BitChute channel. And you're not as active on YouTube because of the censorship and this whole go ahead. Yeah, it's crazy.
My videos. They're almost as bad as Rumble.
They won't even process them?
Correct. It can't get through processing. So it's just something, right? I can get little tiny commercials, 60 seconds. I can do a 2-minute thing, but anything with any substance at all, and it just simply refuses to process. It's a weird form of shadow banning. So I'm a paranoid, and I understand that what I'm going to say may sound on the order of me thinking I'm a targeted individual, right? And I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that the way YouTube is handling my submissions is very similar to what happens with Twitter when I was kicked off of Twitter. I was not officially in any way from Twitter management. I was never officially kicked off, right? So as far as I know, I could not apply under the class action lawsuit. What happened to me was that someone internal to Twitter changed my phone number, my contact phone number, right, in-house. And that contact phone number was put to a legitimate phone that I indeed had owned 3 years back before, and had never, ever, ever been on used for Twitter validation or any of that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I owned that phone, but I didn't have the phone now. And then they took my account and my last tweet, which was about the military should put vitamin D as a requirement. This was way back in the COVID thing, and back in March or April, and they spammed the military bases. They sent it to 3 military bases, and then claimed it was spam, and then gave me a whatever timeout or whatever you want to call it, Twitter jail for a spam. Only here's the thing. I could never get out of it, nor even respond and reply to it, because in order to do that, I had to log in with this new phone number that was not my phone number now. And so then the weird part of that is 6 months later to the day, it was undone and my account was open again. Unbidden. I did nothing. I'd lost Twitter for a number of months, and then boom, it was back. And I had to be told it was back by somebody else, and it had appeared. And then I investigated it, and it appeared exactly to the day. And I found out about it 3 days after. I never thought it was going to come back. Right. And so I'm saying that there is something in the way of evidence that I'm being shadow banned almost on a personal level, if you would. Right.
Yeah. I'm actually dealing with some similar situations. I just had one of my first strikes. It's not my first, but on record right now, just recently expire. Had a second strike that I received about middle of July. They hit me with 12 to 14 videos that they removed, and I won the appeal on 2. When they hit me with the second strike, they actually had 4 videos that were in violation, and technically they could have, terminated my channel in that aspect.
Right.
So I think everybody is pretty aware of the censorship, and ever since that second strike and the 14-day ban, my channel, all the stuff that I had done to gain any grace in the algorithm has been completely lost. Completely lost. I'm starting.
They reset you, yeah.
It's crazy, man, and it's sad. Which is the reason why this video ultimately, the full video will not be available on YouTube. I may take clips from it and encourage people to go over to Odyssey and Library, and I'll probably upload it to BitChute as well. I only have one video over there. That was the banned video from Max Egan. That was one of the strikes that I had gotten. It's getting ridiculous, Cliff, but I know that you've got a lot on your mind. I know you've been talking about a lot of things. You've been talking with JP from BeyondMystic about some of the events taking place. You mentioned dates like the August 8th and 9th and August 16th. If you want to talk about that, you're more than welcome, but I was just pretty much going to hand this over to you. And
Sure. Yeah, no worries, Guy. It's an interesting world we find ourselves in. Okay. So it is more visible to me simply because of age than to younger people. And that's because I simply have seen more and have a broader perspective. But it's an interesting world because we are actually in World War IV. And in World War IV, this is the one for all the marbles, right? This is the absolute table stakes. Everybody is all in on all bets. And if America loses, if the American populace loses, so does the world. Okay, so I'm not expecting I'm expecting a spark, and that spark to be from outside of the United States, I think, because of some hints in my old data sets. But and that spark can come from other countries, but I'm not expecting these other countries to be able to basically liberate themselves in this war. Now, in this war, we have to understand that we are like everybody in all of the world is occupied. So this is like the Nazis have occupied everybody on the whole planet. So we could think of it this way. We could think, we could write a movie where we lost World War II and the Nazis have totally occupied everything. They took over all of Russia. They took over all of China, all of Asia, South America, et cetera, right? Right. And that's pretty much what it is. only it's not people in uniforms with the swastikas on, right? But we indeed did lose World War II. World War II was an act in 4 parts, and the 4th part brought in what we think of as the deep state or the global state, right? The UN, the cooperation, all of that kind of stuff, which sounds good on the surface, but is in fact a very infiltrating mind op, really. It's a way of destroying your mind for resistance to all this other stuff. And so at the end of World War II, we were infiltrated, the whole planet, and we've been occupied, but not conquered yet. This is the point at which the infiltrators, the army that has snuck in from outer space, if we wanted to write it that way, and they occupied the minds of all of our leaders, and they're making them all march step to alien instructions from some bug sitting in a spaceship up in the in the outer reaches of the atmosphere. That would be one way to conceptualize it, because all of our leaders are in fact acting as though they were in lockstep, and they use that word themselves, with some alien controller making them do all of this stuff. And right at this moment, the bug is pushing the buttons to make all of the little zombie minions attack the populace and take over through their control, albeit at a lesser level, of all of their minions, right? And their minions would be the police, the army, etc. This is where we find ourselves right now. And for some strange coincidence or occurrence, you and I and everybody that's going to listen to this is basically within this cadre or cohort of people that are not susceptible to the bug's mind control. And so we see ourselves in the movie like Them, where we put on the glasses.
They live.
Then they live. They're space aliens all the fuck around. And it's like, holy shit, what are we going to do? Right? And then you take off the glasses and it's like normie land again. And that's where we are right now. And what we're attempting to do in our war at this point is to recognize who the players are, including ourselves, and what the next objective is. And we've come to a conclusion. And the conclusion is that there's basically 3 sets of players, and it could be subdivided, but basically 3 sets. And there's the occupiers, there's those people not susceptible to the mind control, which I call the woo people, and then there's the normies. And the normies are by far the big mass. And in fact, the normies are the prize in the war. Okay, because the occupiers cannot occupy the planet in the way they need to and want to unless they control all of the normies. And unless they can do with the normies as they would want. Okay, if they can't do that, they're in a real world of hurt. And this is they've put it all on the table. They're putting it all out there now. And this is that battle to determine who's going to control the normies. Now, the woo people have decided through universe guiding that the way to win the war is to not try to control the normies, but to remove the normies as a potential. So think of it this way. If you were in a football stadium and 1,000, and you're in there with, say, 30,000 people, right? You're in a football stadium and 30,000 people, and 1,000 terrorists come and they ring that football stadium and they're holding you guys hostage. Well, if I take a blimp over to that football stadium and lower down 30,000 weapons, you're not hostages anymore. You're an armed force, and it is no longer a hostage situation. That's what's going on with the normies. Okay, we're in an information war to bust the mind control. And so the idea is to liberate the normies, whereas the other guys want to capture the normies. Right. And it is a type of war that is done at very low levels, a lot of people dying, as we see Afghanistan at all, and very high levels, very complicated, very complicated, and profound levels of planning to get things to occur, because we're not simply doing the normal logistics of war.
Well, you mentioned this was kind of a secret war, an information war that's been going on since the 1890s. It's a war on our minds, on the people, and we're on the cusp of this. And you mentioned, World War II, September 11th, 1941, you mentioned specifically about, people not being aware of what was going on because of the difference in technology from then to today. And I would definitely agree that in World War II, ultimately it wasn't necessarily a country that won, but an idea or a philosophy, and that would be the ways of the Nazis. The Nazi Party pretty much won, infiltrated into the United States, into the science and education and all those elements, and kind of amalgamated itself into the rest of the world, which is, really interesting. So I wanted to
but stop for a second on concentrate on that, because all wars, if you look at them, are nothing more than the conflict of two ideas. You can take any war throughout history and take any aspect of it, and you'll find that it is simply a contention between two ideas. The Crusades, religion versus religion, the Mongols versus the Islamists, et cetera, et cetera. So you're quite correct. And this was the ultimate expression of it. It is as though humanity is evolving warfare to concentrate on the absolute core, the essence of it, as opposed to what basically is the triviality of it, which is the killing of the pawns in the war.
In this way, too, in a way, like you had mentioned, a lot of people are just completely unaware that this is even happening. So the best way to be able to do something like we're talking about is to make the people even completely unaware that it's even occurring while it's occurring right in front of their eyes.
And indeed so. And it's been ongoing like that, like a mafia war being conducted in secret, right? Where the idea is that your Cosa Nostra gang versus the other Cosa Nostra gang is going to duke it out. And the idea is to not alert the normies or not alert the police. Now, in this case, one gang owns the police, but still the idea is let's not alert the normies that there's anything happening. So,
right.
All right, so now this is key, right? Because here's the deal. In a mafia war like that, as long as both sides play to the rules, then it is a battle between those two sides within this framework of normie land. As soon as one side decides, well, hell with it, let's just tell the normies what's going on, and then the framework of the battlefield instantly changes in a way that is, for the other side that's not prepared for this, is both unexpected and untenable. They can't have that. And this is even more the case because in our case, because in a gang war, with one of the things that upsets everybody is to find out how they've been preyed on. So if you've got one gang preying on you, through extortion and all these other ways, and even doing it surreptitiously and sneakily, it's a shock to find out you're just simply their cattle. And so you get all the emotions in there. In a regular kind of a gang war, you might then go take action just as a victim. But if the structure is there, you may not even know you're a victim, just by the way that they set these things up. We're at that point now where it had been realized a long time ago by a self-organizing collective of people that are against our leaders being controlled by this space alien bug or whatever. And they formed this collective, and they decided that one of their best tactics was to alert the normies. And these guys are doing this because it is in the interest, because the crimes of the leaders and so on are so heinous, are so egregious, that they strike a deep level of revulsion within the human beings. All right. And so that deep level of revulsion can be counted on. This gets into biology, and the best way to really understand biology is to read a book by Sapolsky called Behave. Huge, massive book. Okay, and he's a guy out of Stanford. But anyway, so here's the deal. Democrats, all right, they say that conservative people have a high level of revulsion, internal revulsion. And liberals have a lesser level of revulsion. And it varies from individual to individual and instance to instance, like whatever is the sparking instance. So if you're a doctor, you can't be revolted by getting in there, and if you're a surgeon, and mucking about in somebody's guts, right? You can't be turned off by the sight of blood. But you may very well have a high level of revulsion and be quite conservative otherwise, and have very good hygiene and standards and all of these kind of things. So these are internal values. These values are behavioral characteristics that come out and are expressions of very, very, very deep core intrinsic human values that I think predate or you're born with them. Okay, so there are people, because I can get into it, but I not necessarily here. There are people that are born as pedophiles, and
Right.
there is a small cadre, in addition to that, that can find it to be learned behavior. But everybody else is going to have an extremely high level of revulsion to this. It will be seen as an aberrant within the tribe at a almost cellular level. And so it had been determined, because of the nature of these crimes, that this was the best point of contact to get the normies to turn on the captured government, captured leadership globally. They are doing these crimes, but you can't just go out and slap the normies in the face with it. You have to do this in a particular manner. It has to be done step by step by step by step, as the SOC, the self-organizing collective, captures all the normies' attentions and interest by interest. So they've been going through money and showing how all the captured leadership is doing bad things to the money. We see how they've done bad things to the military. We see how they've done bad things to the border. You see how they've done bad things to the farmers, paying the farmers to destroy crops, and they've shut down the water in the West to further cause problems. All of this stuff is coming on out, right? And so it's all there. We see all of the horror of the Biden-Harris Psaki shit show and all of the symbolism that they're using. The normies don't understand the symbolism, right? Like Harris laying a wreath on on the site of John McCain, the great traitor, the man who shall not be named, on the site of his plane crash, 3 days or on the in her visit, on the third year Delta of his death. So there's all this weird symbolism going on, and the normies don't understand it, but it gets their mind sort of a little tweaked as to there is something going on. And we see what we're starting to see at this point is the crumbling of the pandemic, okay? Because the pandemic was an op. It was designed, it took them from at least 2008 through to 2016 to design this as an op, to get the lockdowns and all of this stuff in order to induce everyone to try and take the vaccine, because the vaccine is indeed a depopulation tool. Now, here's the thing on it. It's my thinking now that the powers that be are not necessarily concerned about killing vast quantities of people right this time. Their goal is to to get the vaccine to be a requirement to attend schools for the K through 12. Okay, this is their goal, and the reason that they want to do this is because it for sure induces phenotypically specific infertility.
Wow.
So there are some people, some phenotypical classes within the populace that will be made absolutely infertile by these shots, and the goal is depopulation. And so what they're trying to do is to stop the next generation of people being born in a number of racial groups. Okay, all across the planet. It goes way deep into China and so on. China has 150 phenotypical Chinese, 150 types of people that can be considered to be Chinese. They don't all look Chinese, of course. But the Han Chinese are the most numerous within the CCP, but they're not the most numerous within China. And they are setting out right now, in my opinion, to eliminate the next generation in over 100 of those phenotypes.
That's interesting because, I mean, instead of like outright seeing a bunch of people like just keel over in the next, couple months, having something happen in time, it doesn't really, people don't associate the two together. And I mean, they've been doing these kind of things, I feel like in Africa for quite some time, in Asian countries.
Yeah. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Yeah.
24,000 females that were paralyzed or killed, and how many hundreds of thousands that were infertile, right?
Right. I was gonna say the infertility is a big thing. That's prevention. I was studying while I was going to school for business administration. I was studying demographics, which is really interesting. And they've actually brought that up recently about how the white Caucasian people aren't birthing as many children as previously, and other ethnicities and races are breeding more. So
okay, so that's really,
I mean, I know it's completely off kilter for what we were going to talk about. I did want to get.
No. I mean, it's pertinent. It's very pertinent because they want to eliminate whites. Okay, they absolutely, the powers that be, even a lot of them that are white, don't want whites because we're raspy, right? We're just raspy bastards. We just don't take a lot of shit, and it's easier to. Okay, so you can actually say it is true, and we used to say in the '60s that you heard the term like soul man, right? In the '60s, black people in the United States were characterized as having soul, right? This was a slang that was used to describe a vast complex of behavioral characteristics that we could call a black culture. This was a strong black culture. And it had its own label, and you could apply that label to almost all of the black people around. Now, there were people that didn't fit that culture, of course, but they still identified it, even though they may not have lived it per se. And I'm not talking about urban, I'm not talking about hip hop or any of that. I'm talking about just the nature of black to black interaction. Now, I've lived in the South, I've lived as a minority in black countries, so I know how this thing goes. I'm very observant. But in the 60s, at that time, with that strong black culture, you could say that white people didn't have the same, they didn't have soul. They didn't have that same cultural thing. Our culture is much more loose, much more homogenous. It doesn't have a lot of the behavioral characteristics that you see within the soul or the cultural definitions for blacks. And so it was a strong culture descriptor. It was not to say that whites did not have a culture. We just don't express it the same way. But the point of all of this is that if you are a politician or a leader or whatever, you can move strong culture people more easily than loose culture people. So because I'm out here, I'm on my own. Fuck it, I don't care what so-and-so's doing, right? But if you're tied to a strong culture, if you've got this clan kind of a thing, if the rest of the clan is doing it, well, you're going to be more inclined to do it as well.
Yeah.
So this aspect of white culture, white life, defeats the powers that be. We're not as easy to move through the cultural imperative, where if you can shift the culture through language, and that's how you do it, is language and advertising. That's why I'm a linguist. You shift culture through language, and look at how they've shifted the black culture from soul through hip hop to gangsta to whatever the hell we've got now, right?
It's interesting,
BLM,
yeah.
right? It's all been done by language over these years, mainly through getting these kids into college where they're brainwashed. Anyway, so
the family life is deteriorating, so it kind of feeds into what you're saying, and then you're also seeing. So I mean, and you're seeing the nationalism aspect starting to deteriorate as well.
All of those are incentivized. All of those were incentivized by our captured leaders. They set up the system that incentivized the destruction of family life for everybody, and it didn't descend as much on rural people as it did on urban people, both black, white, and brown. Right.
Right.
But all this is incentivized. You get what you incentivize. So our culture has been disincentivized for at least the last 40 years and maybe 60 or 70, disincentivized from becoming a strong, self-protecting, growing culture. Instead, it has become this
consumers.
Exactly, liberal morass of no rules, and so on. And that is deliberate in order that we might not be shocked when the power elite come on out later and start eating people and all these other things, right? And look at how they did indeed. They ate people by proxy in Hollywood and, in all those weird parties and shit, right? And they do all this strange stuff in spirit cooking. Now, I'm a esoteric and occult kind of guy, and I'm aware of spirit cooking. I know recipes. I've got a bunch of German or books written in German, not German books, but books written in German by witches and warlocks and stuff that even have formula for this shit that goes back to like the 16 and 1500s.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I was in Europe. I collected weird stuff. But anyway, so my point being, I never expected in my life to find the term spirit cooking being a well-known in normie land, or not well-known, but at least a lot of normies are cognizant with the term. It's been out in the public discussions. And so spirit cooking is really foul stuff, right? regardless of the material, the matter that is involved in the process, the idea of what it is to do is disgusting. And it is akin to, it is a key or prana or anime rape. That's the whole point of it, is to rape an individual in their vibratory being. And so I never expected, it's like, these Democrat things were, when Trump was running, they were saying, they were getting witches together and they were going to do spirit cooking and stuff. And I thought, holy crap. And, these guys have come totally unhinged. And I didn't realize how close they were. So we're at this war. There's all kinds of mechanisms and weapons being used, and it is the weirdest woo war ever on our planet. And hopefully it will be the last interspecies war. Okay, it'll be the last, hopefully, after we get done with this, which may take decades and decades and decades, may take 50 years to get through all this stuff. But after we do, hopefully this will be the last ever war among humans, in between humans. I suspect that we will have wars between humans and other beings, but that's something else entirely. And a lot of these other beings deserve it, because I'm of the opinion they're down here mucking about with us.
And that's very, very quite possible. And you do mention that we have just transitioned from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, and that would put us in an age of enlightenment, and that would be kind of working towards the betterment of, no,
it's the age of knowledge, not
age of knowledge. Okay. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, and there's a big difference, okay? Because see, here's what people have to understand. Enlightenment is a harsh process. It's not nice. Enlightenment is, it slaps you in the face. You see every ugly bit of reality, and you will forever see it, and you can never, ever forget it. And you know about every bit of evil being done everywhere on the planet at all times, and you will never, ever forget it. And you must inculcate that into the core of every one of your cells. So don't let anybody ever tell you that enlightenment leads you to anything nice, pretty, roses, smelling good, any of that kind of stuff. Okay. In order to do enlightenment, you've got to be in the shit so deep that you can't see the top of it on top of you. Okay, you've got to be that deep in it, because enlightenment is seeing reality as it is with no filters. Wow. And I can tell you, I've been there.
I've been partially there, so I get a feeling of what you're talking about, and it makes complete sense. But the age of knowledge.
Wait a second. So there's a difference here. You know, the guy that wrote a book, I can't think of his name at the moment, called The Razor's Edge. And people don't, and it's a great book. It was like written 30, 40, 50 years ago, something like that. It's about this guy after World War I. In fact, like Bill Murray made the movie. That is the most accurate description of enlightenment I've ever seen. Okay.
William Somerset Maugham.
Yep, that's it. That is the most incredible novel. I mean, I like good literature and well-placed words. As a linguist, it was a very good book, and it twists your guts all to hell and gone. But in it, there is the concept that enlightenment is walking the razor's edge, being on the razor's edge, because what is there on that razor's edge? It's clean, it's precise, it's cutting, it's always cutting deep, and it's always pain. Always pain.
Yeah,
so,
100%.
So bear that in mind, right? So now we are in the age of knowledge. And so people will not have to be enlightened, and they can be very thankful for that. All right. Enlightenment is a process that comes to you when you're ready and not a minute before. And to seek it is foolish. You should seek release. Moksha.
Thank you for sharing that wisdom.
Yeah, sorry. I get pissed about this stuff because I've done a lot of Zen, right? And it makes you hard and tough about this shit. You sit there for 12 hours in absolute pain. I've done 12 hours. I've never done a 24-hour Seiza session. And
I've read some of the stories about Buddha and some of the things that Siddhartha would have potentially went through to achieve what he achieved. And definitely it was going through hell on earth. And, so it's crazy, man. You had
scopy as shit, dude. Yeah.
you had mentioned depopulation, de-evolution.
That's the cool part. Okay, so here's devolution. All right. We're going to
I never know how to say devolution or de-evolution, but
no, devolution.
devolution.
Okay. We're not de-evolving. Okay. We are devolving, which means it's an active process that, under the control of our minds. All right. There is no, we don't have a corresponding phrase for evolution. There is no, well, maybe you could say evolution versus evolution or something along those lines. We actually do take no mental acuity and put it into our lives in order to evolve our lives forward in a collective sense. Devolution, though, is exactly that. It is a plan. It is a goal to devolve the populace and the military away from the captured, mind-controlled elites and leaders. And so basically we have the woo people, the normies, and the captives of the bugs are leaders. I use that term loosely. And we're going to take the military and just walk away from them and let the bug controlled system collapse. And that's what is happening at the moment. And in order to do this, it is necessary that we wake up a large mass of the normies. Otherwise, there's going to be normie on normie violence because they will still be captured in the mental sense. So all of the normies think that certain things are, they've been taught it in school, they've been brainwashed into it, in all of our social media and all of this kind of stuff, like, the president has power. There's just this entire paradigm that politicians are leaders, and all of it is linguistically controlled. And it has been under devolution. It has been attacked and is being attacked in a specific way to at this point, remove the paradigm structure in the normie minds that supports the idea that mainstream media and these politicians are in fact as described. So it's a weird kind of a war, right? Because it's not simply information, because giving you the information doesn't mean you're necessarily going to make the connections. So we have to do things, or not we, but I mean, things have to be done in order that all of the normies will get the information and also make those connections within the information. And it is just so complex. Like take the pandemic stuff and what recently happened, right? So I had this thing saying that, okay, we're going to get this big emotional spike and it's going to blow up, way up, and then it's going to continue out through the rest of the month and grow. And that big emotional spike would come in on the 24th, thereabouts, right? And in fact, on the 24th, what happens? Well, 24th and 25th, we get this emotional spike, everybody freaking out because FDA approved the vax, right? No, they didn't. But
I wanted to get into that as well, as well as potential return of Trump.
Yeah, so it's a feint. It is I'm moving this way to see if you'll react to that and get everybody else moving this way. So they're trying to make you think it's been FDA approved, so that all of those people that had in their mind, I'm not taking anything that's not FDA approved, would suddenly crumble. They wouldn't have that logic anymore. And in fact, what they did was they approved a drug that Pfizer owns through another company that has yet to be made.
Right, which would be, so I'm at the FDA website and they're talking about the Pfizer BioNTech.
Correct.
And that's the one that's supposed to be named that strange name, Comirnaty.
Yeah, Comirnaty.
It's supposed to be like COVID, community, immunity, and some weird stuff. But they're making it sound like the original Pfizer vaccine, because I think there were the 3 vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, and then Johnson & Johnson. Yeah. And then they're making it sound like Pfizer is rebranding the Pfizer vaccine to this Comirnaty vaccine, and that's the one that's FDA approved. But you're saying, in fact, there's 2 different ones.
Well, if you look,
and not only that, but the one that's been approved by the FDA, it's not out. It didn't go through any sort of trials, any sort of scientific exploration, any sort of public meetings, and it seemed like it just got pushed through as if maybe somebody was paid off to allow for this to take place.
Well, here's something else. Okay, so if you examine the nature of how it was approved, you discover that it doesn't exist, and there's been no billing and rating numbers granted to it. So Social Security couldn't even bill you on it if it did exist, because they don't have those billing and rating numbers that are assigned to all the medicines, that you get these explanation of benefits from your insurance company saying we paid this amount on this drug with this number, right? And it doesn't have any of those numbers. It's not in any of the databases and stuff. So this is a head feint to get everybody that was hesitant because of this to try and break that loose in their mind. So this is how information wars work. So this is a really great example. So think about this. You've got all of these people and I've said it myself, I'm not going to take anything that's not FDA approved. Well, the fact of the matter is, I'm not going to take anything that's FDA approved anyway, because here's the deal. The Food and Drug Administration is an administration. It's not an agency. It has no purview. It has no legal right to look out for me. It's not even required to look out for me. It doesn't provide food safety. That's not its job. Its job is to administer the food and drugs within the United States from the manufacturer's viewpoint. It is 100% captured by the manufacturers, who are in fact woke, and it's all also captured by the bugs. But it's 100% captured by the big pharma industry and the big food industry, and it works for their interests. And we know this because the head of Moderna used to be the head of the FDA only a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, left the FDA and took a nice cushion job.
Right. So this is the way it's going. So what they're trying to do is to trick people. And so we know how weak they are and where we are at within this battle, that this is in existence. But what I found fascinating was that they were targeting, through this huge effort right here, it tells me that there is a very large number of people that have been able to throw up resistance by saying it's not FDA approved, by going to the legality of it. And so here they're trying to undermine the legality of it, but the best they can do is only in the headlines. They're not able to actually do anything legal. This shows how weak they are as an administration. They're isolated. We're in a weird situation. So Biden cheated for the CCP. The CCP cheated along with other countries and other groups and individuals to get
You're talking about the elections, right?
Correct, to get Biden into office. And so Biden and all of the people that are there, the 41 people from that one company that are actually running the White House, this includes the communist Psaki and all of her ilk, all of these people know they cheated, right? And so they know they have no legitimate moral authority. And when they are deprived by devolution from even the half-assed appearance of authority over the actual institutions, and they start getting pushback from the populace, this is all they've got are word tricks. They don't have the moral authority to do any kind of forcing here, right? And if you look at Austin, the great woke Secretary of Defense guy, right? Okay, if you look at his letter mandating the vaccine, he has mandated, and it's got to be done, that everybody in the military get a shot of a fully licensed vaccine. Well, there's no fully licensed vaccine that exists. And if you just read the headlines, you'll think,
but the general public thinks the general public thinks yes, it exists and this is good to go, and
that's what they're that's what they're trying to make all of the normies think. And now what's getting them really freaked out is that they had not anticipated self-organizing collectives. Now, I saw these things showing up in the data back in like the early run in like 1997, and had not at that time come up with a label or a descriptor for it. But it is a situation where it is the way that the world works in terms of reality, like, sand clumping around water could be thought of as a self-organizing collective. There's properties that go along that cause the sand points to get into the water and everything fuse together, and it seems as though the sand is clumping together on its own. But in the vast quantity of the beach, you're not going to be able to say, well, that piece of sand and this piece of sand and this piece of sand are all going to be forming up under these conditions. You can't predict these sort of things. And so the captured occupying government, the occupying global government over Earth that's being controlled by this great bug in the space, was unprepared for humanity to react the way that humanity and everything else reacts in a distributed system, as a self-organizing collective, which is actually the basis for for the thinking about neural net computing that was never, ever, ever really achieved, because neural net computing, which should react this way as almost as a chemical catalytic process, is in fact hamstrung by the way that they have to train the neural net. And so they train them to the output that is described by someone's mind. So they might as well be doing brute force programming for all, it's just a little bit more efficient is all. It's not a great breakthrough because of that limitation. And see, so distributed systems, organic systems, react and move very much faster than you could ever get anything to occur if you had to design it. So this is the situation. If you were in that stadium with the 30,000 people being held hostage by 1,000 terrorists, and you gave those 30,000 people all weapons and just let them organize themselves, it'll be over very quickly. All right. But if you were to try and intrude and get them to organize and to go in specific ways and do all of this stuff on their own, you're going to have to intrude. It's going to be much more lengthy. It's going to be much more involved, and it's simply going to fail because of the imposition of a top-down kind of a structure on what should be an organic, chemical nature kind of a response. And you see this in mob behavior and all of that kind of stuff. So BLM, I knew, was not mob action. I knew it was a top-down controlled event from the very beginning all the way through because of all the people with the bullhorns. And no matter where they were in what cities, they were all chanting the same damn stuff, right?
Right.
This is just exactly from the same people that do the same thing every day to your local news channel. So your local news channel says the exact same words at the exact same time in the news channel as everybody in every other local news channel clear across the country.
George Soros.
Yeah, exactly so. So because it's designed that way. And so those systems that are all out there that are this top-down design, I think of as manted, okay, or as bug-like, because bugs live in that sort of a structure. They live in a power pyramid with the bug on top that's controlling everything through a pheromonic production, and then the whole mass of the hive. This is a hive mind. And so all top-down power pyramids, in my opinion, are external to Earth. And we're about to see the outbreak of that particular battle that will free humanity. This battle will occur here in the United States, although it may be sparked in some other country. That battle may go on and probably will go on for a number of years, although it will be won the moment it actually happens and the normies realize it's going down. Okay, right. Because at that point we've already won. And I think we're mere months away from that, from the outpouring of that. And you'll see this battle because it'll be really strange, because it won't be people shooting or any of this kind of stuff. It'll be coming out on your television, on your phone. It'll be on billboards. People will be discussing it on social media and everything. And it will be an outpouring of fact. And it will be the facts that will absolutely destroy the top-down narrative that has been glued together by human trafficking, bribery, murder, sex slavery, and all of this kind of stuff. Because all you have to do to get the herd to turn is to reach into that emotional point inside the herd in each and every person there, each and every person you can reach, and tweak that to show you're looking at deviance. There is a revulsion. Now, this is where the bugs and us have a similarity, okay? This I know from my many journeys with psychedelic things to hyperspace and discussions.
Okay.
Bugs, almost all manner of insects, grasshoppers, crickets, any kind of mobile insect that way, not a hive insect like an ant, although they will also do it. But a mobile insect like that gets a lot more mutations. And you will see conditions where you have great swarms of locusts, and you will see at the beginning of those swarms of locusts that may go on for months, a weirdness where one portion of the locust population attacks and destroys the other portion. You will literally see 5 and 6 locusts grab another one and rip it to shreds, and go on and grab another one and rip it to shreds until the whole of the area. I've seen this in Kansas, where the whole of the area is just filled with locust bits, just parts everywhere, and they're raining out of the sky and stuff. Just this weird battle. This is those locusts purging the genome of the species. They're getting rid of mutants. Okay, so we have that not in our physical being, but in our emotional being. We have this idea of revulsion, of no, you're deviant, you get away from me, I can't stand you, right? Now, see, I've been on that because I have a brother that was schizophrenic. He's dead, and I'm thus a schizotypical. Schizophrenics emit chemicals from their smells, from their sweat, that makes people isolate them, and they are self-isolating because they feel they know they are repulsive to other individuals, but they don't know why. And so throughout history, you'll find these are the people that live out in the woods. They're the hermits. They're the mad people. And they actually are the prophets. Moses was reputedly a schizotypical, if not an outright schizophrenic. And many of our people through history have been schizophrenics. And we see the witches are typically the schizophrenics and so on. And they're self-isolating because of this characteristic. But this characteristic that comes out in our sweat and stuff is a part of our vagus nervous system. I know this is real complicated, but our vagus nervous system controls virtually all of our hormonal and pheromonal production. And within that vagus nervous system is the ability to tweak that and have physical reactions to emotions. This is why we have sexual attraction. You feel a sexual attraction, you create a pheromone, that pheromone transmits over to the female, and she picks it up and gets that sympathetic vibration. And then that's what actually is occurring. That's how, and it doesn't have to be sexual. It can be at any other level of humanity. This is how we communicate with people. It also happens with revulsion, okay? And so you get pheromones that from people that are mentally ill, that what do the cops call them? Emotionally disturbed individuals. If you are emotionally disturbed, you will have pheromones that are emotionally disturbed. So the best thing you can ever do is to find a true guru, because the air around these individuals will put you into such a state of peace. And it's because the pheromones that are coming out of their bodies are as in fact as they are. They are authentic beings where every aspect of their body is vibrating at the same level of their thoughts and stuff, right? And there's even an animal that does this, and that's called capybara. It's a little snout, cute little dog sort of thing, pig dog kind of looking thing, and it emits pheromones, and dogs and cats and birds, everybody loves it. All kinds of animals just love it. Dogs love being around it. You would think it would be a prey to the dog, and you get them, and the dogs just mellow out. Everybody loves these animals, and if you be around them, and you're sensitive, you get the pheromones from them, and you get this sense of peace as well. They're not a good pet because they're sort of like more of a goat or something in that sense of, how they would forage. But so the pheromonic aspect of this is tied into our level of revulsion. All right. And so if you're sensitive, if you have good quality metrics in all of your senses, then you may have a very high level of revulsion or very discrete level. Let's just say that you can just, very discrete with it. And that is what is going on at this moment at its deepest level, is that there is a battle for humanity, and they're going to use that aspect of us by tweaking it to show us that we've been ruled and occupied by deviants for this or at this moment. And then over the course of time, they will show how long it's been going on and how abused humanity has been. And this is just great for me because we're going to get into the point where we can say, all right, all you academics, you've got no basis in reality for saying any of your history is accurate. Now we got to dig in and find out real shit.
That's what I'm really looking forward to is reconstructing what actually happened in history. We got a little slight echo. I think it's just stopped. Sometimes I have interference. I don't know if it was your speaker, but sometimes I have interference.
I'm way out too on the hinterland here on the coast of the North American continent, and there's a lot of tourists. So
I saw it does affect your internet. So you had also mentioned on JP from BeyondMystic show the idea that because of what's occurring now with Afghanistan and in combination with some of the last videos that you put out, that everything's going to kind of hit the fan, and we may get to a point where as a whole, the people will choose to have someone like Trump return to try to help straighten us out from this mess. Is that kind of what you're anticipating? And can you expand on that?
I'm okay. See, it's complicated, guy. Okay. So no, I'm not anticipating a great call for Trump to come back. I'm in fact anticipating a great call for Trump to come back amidst a very deeply troubled and muddied situation in which he may wish to defer. Okay, so a lot of it's going to depend on the devolution process. There are a lot of people right now calling for Trump to come back, right? And every day that Biden does something, there's yet another person saying, "Oh my God, get Trump back here," right? This sort of thing. Okay, and so that's part of the whole overall process. But this is not about Trump. It's not about the United States. This is about the planet. And so we're in this for the long haul, and there's a lot more suffering that's going to be done, though I expect that the battle will become public this year in the United States. So before December, before the end of December in the United States, I think we'll have this battle come out in a much more public fashion. It will lead to deep social changes, deep social changes. How fast is something I can't predict or even analyze because I'm not privy to the data as to how fast reactions are occurring in normie land. So bear in mind, okay, so consider this, that there's a group of people now probably moved in isolation, now probably not in the E-ring of the DOD, but somewhere else, and they're still working. And these guys are modelers, and they're modeling for specific things within the linguistics, and they have their tests, and they do a test, and they design a test, and they write out a bunch of specific words, and then they have a feedback mechanism in sensors to pick up information as a result of this test being done. And they ran a test the other day, and they're continuing to run these tests when they have Trump repeat specific words about the vaccine and saying, "You have your freedoms, but I like it, I got it," and so on, right? That phrase, that repetition of that phrase in various different places, in various different meetings, is, in my opinion, a test. And it is designed to elicit a reaction, and look at how happy Trump is at being booed. Okay, look at how his face just lights up. Oh, this is great. And then he says, "You have your freedoms," and he goes right on. Okay, this is designed to pick up a particular emotional quality out of that crowd. They want to get that crowd to where everybody in that crowd will say, "No, no, 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 no," and then not give Trump any more shit for it. Okay, and then they'll know, okay, we're at this point, because they're not trying to raise sheep, right? This is not about trying to recreate the sheeple and make them fall in with what Trump says. It has nothing to do with that. These are designed to cause emotional conditions in humans that it will affect their behavior. And if you go read Sapolsky and you read in there about, I think it's maybe page 340 or something like that, you'll get into an area where it talks about how to and this is what advertisers do, how to manipulate people. Now, in this case, they're not trying to manipulate them into being further asleep, which is usually the goal of the advertising. Buy more, buy more, buy more, right? Mm-hmm. In this case, it's to turn it back on to basically make them be a little bit more self-examining, to ask, why am I buying more? Why am I buying more? Right? And then pretty soon they'll say why and drop the buy more, and then they'll look around. That's just the way the thing goes. And that's what's attempting to be done now. It is succeeding hugely, vastly. Okay, there's normies that are just shaking off the tree like mad every day. And if you listen to the language of the normies and their interactions with or with people that are not of their political ilk, it's changing radically. So we had this progression that has been going on for a long time of this hardening and splitting of the populace by the leftists along these socialist lines of, I'm more pure of a socialist than you, and so I'm going to cancel you, right? That kind of thing, right?
The cancel culture, yeah.
Right, but that, if you look at it though, the mechanism that worked on was really what happens with all of these leftist movements, where it gets to the point where they start purging even the upper leftists and throwing them all in jail because you're not as much of a communist as I am. I find your communism weak, and so I'm going to throw you in jail. That's that kind of thing, right? And so here we are at that point, but it's happening, and the cancel culture is basically burnt out. It's got to the point now, because of Biden and the success of the cancel culture. Everybody sees that success all around them. They see it in the cities they're living in that are hellholes with all of the homelessness, the drugs, and all of this kind of stuff. And people are basically waking up and saying there has to be some other avenue or approach to this. And there are individuals that are out there now offering those avenues. But you'll notice nobody is offering solutions.
Right.
Okay?
No, I'm not seeing very many solutions at all.
That's deliberate. Okay. So you'll see a lot of individuals. And so you'll see a lot of individuals popping up, trying to get their own self-organizing collectives going, figuring I can solve this problem and that sort of stuff. And they're not getting any support from anything on an institutional basis. And that's because of devolution. It's way premature to solve problems, because say that I could solve the southern border problem. Who benefits? Yes, the populace benefits, but who benefits more? Biden, Psaki, Harris, right?
Right.
Because I would have taken a giant problem away from them. So we're going to be in a number of problems, and there's going to be, every day we're going to add more problems into this for a period of time until we reach basically a turning point, a tipping point for the last big tranche of the normies. And at that point, we will have an emotional response that the devolution planners will be able to pick up through their testing procedures, which are ongoing now. They're monitoring polls and all of this kind of stuff, and they're monitoring communications. I mean, they listen to everything. They're listening to this almost in real time, probably.
Right.
And analyzing it all, so they know, and they know, as I do, that language changes before behavior changes. And so they just need to pick up those precursor changes in language to know about where they are. And then they'll initiate the next phase, and then the next phase. So what we have yet to encounter are the giant economic collapse. Maybe the stock market, I don't know what it's at now. I don't do stocks, but maybe
it keeps all-time highs, man. We'll see little slight corrections, and I think it was just like 2 days ago or something to that effect. Just recently, we had all-time highs in S&P 500 and the Nasdaq.
Okay, we're real close then.
Super disconnected.
Yeah, exactly. What's going to happen is that the Fed they're going to run up to a hard stop here. And once they can't produce
deflation, like they're going to try the deflationary period, like
no, it's not. No, it's going to break.
Okay.
It's not going to be part of their intended flow of things, and so they will be faced with a crisis that will occur suddenly. And I think between now and say the middle of September or something like that. And it will affect their ability to deal with the upcoming end of the fiscal year at a federal level. And it's going to affect it in accounting levels and money flow levels and bank flow levels. And they're going to have to try all different kinds of things to overcome and compensate and just keep moving, each of which will start compounding. And that I think will lead to this stock market debacle. And, they may. Now, bear in mind that we created the Federal Reserve by secret meetings in 1908, 1910, and 1911.
Jekyll Island.
Correct, Jekyll Island, Creature of Jekyll Island. And
yeah, awesome book people can read from G. Edward Griffin. I always recommend that book.
Yeah, and then we created the Federal Reserve by the sinking of the Titanic, and the death of the Morgans and the Vanderbilts. And then they brought in 1913.
They had to get a certain president because all the presidents wouldn't accept it, and I can't remember who it was offhand. Wilson.
So
and he was the one to sign.
The death of his daughter.
He signed it in.
He signed it in, and then it was less than a year later they had to shut the stock market down, and they shut it down for 8 months.
They created the IRS at that time too, as well, taxation of labor.
Yeah. So, but my point being that we do have the situation where they will maybe be forced in the same position of shutting down the stock market. It will become so irregular, so wonky. I don't say that you had some large share, like maybe say large dollar share, like Berkshire Hathaway. And I don't know what it's at, but let's just say it was worth 100,000. It would not be feasible to run a stock market where that would drop $90,000 in one day and then rise back up 80,000 the next. Okay, at that level of Zimbabwe kind of a hyperinflation, deflation occurring at that level, you have to stop the stock market because the swings are so volatile that everybody has to comment on it, and it points out how weak the currency is and where everything is bad and so on. All of this is an illusion. The occupiers only exist through the delusion and illusions they've placed over the minds of the normies, that they know what they're doing and things are operating well and it should go this way, and that the physics support this and you can only use rockets and all of this kind of stuff, right? We've been captured in this paradigm that is really bogus, and it's coming to its final limits at the moment. And we're going to be privy to watching this. It's going to be very dangerous because of the chaos and the things that are going to happen. And people, in my opinion, seriously need to prepare for what's coming over these months, not only physically and getting food, water, etc., right? And prepare to live without power. If it comes to that, prepare to live without communications, but also prepare your mind for what will be out there soon. And I don't know how soon, but within 5 or 6 months, we may be in a position where for some period of time thereafter, the single largest point of attention in the human attention market is all of the evil crimes that have been done throughout the past history by all of the supposed leaders that have gotten Nobel Peace Prizes and all of this kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So it's going to shatter the minds of people. Now, I know that Alfred Nobel was a dynamite maker and he's a munitions guy, and that the Nobel Peace Prize has nothing to do with peace, right? It's just a sop. It's just part of their structure for paying everybody off without actually paying everybody off. Just like the book deals, right? They don't care that Hillary Clinton's book only sells 65,000 copies, but they paid her for, $45 million bonus or whatever, right? They don't care. As the point was to give her the money and have her have something she could report to IRS as being legitimate.
Yeah, well, okay. Let me kind of review a few things. So we have the idea of election frauds, an economic collapse. We've had what recently occurred in Afghanistan. We have the idea that you're talking about normies really starting to wake up as to what's going on between everything from 2020 to Afghan to what's going to take place. You mentioned the idea of potential power outages, no internet, no communications. Do you see over this time period that you're mentioning within, a few months, 5, 6 months, and this is based off your predictive linguistics, do you see like actual violence occurring? Like the war becoming more traditional and people getting guns and pew pew?
Okay. So people will so we have to be careful in language, right? If you say the war becoming more traditional, do you mean organized groups out there shooting at each other? Well, we've got that now. I mean, we've got
here in the United States is, I guess, more what I'm.
We've got Antifa fighting with Proud Boys. Now, at some point, yes, we will have the military involved. Will we have our military involved on both sides? Probably.
Split military fighting each other and with us, against us, and with us.
Because not all of our military, some of our military is controlled by the bug.
Would that be a civil war type situation?
No. Okay. That's the case. It is not a civil war, no matter how much it's convenient for me to think of these guys as being controlled by the bug. Okay, it's a handy label. So these bug people, the mind controlled guys, as much as they may want a civil war, because the bug wants to eliminate us. The bug doesn't like us because we're psychically active and so on, right? There's a lot of reasons. I can get into the real deep woo on that. But it wants to kill off as much of humanity as possible. Just like, think about it. Why do you think, I think that the leaders have never examined their own understanding of things. They say in the Georgia Guidestones, limit your population to 500 million. How is that possibly in the leader's interest in any way, shape, or form?
It doesn't give enough, to me, it doesn't give enough slaves.
Correct, exactly. And they don't have enough infrastructure to even support the kind of lifestyle that the elite and aristocracy had at the beginnings of the British Empire. Not even the end of the British Empire. So they could not. So their idea is, now I think, okay, so maybe they're thinking 500 million people and a bunch of robot slaves. With 500 million people, you don't have the ability to have the factories to build the Tesla kind of style robots that he's talking about, or the androids or any of that. You need a very large population to have the infrastructure. And so I'm of the opinion that the bug put that in the leaders' minds, and that all of their supposed reasons are simply the what their mind comes up with so that they will feel emotionally comfortable with their decision. So let me go back to a different idea here for a second. I know an individual. This individual is anti-jab. Didn't want it, been fighting it. He's actually actively been fighting it and fighting the whole infrastructure of the pandemic and all of this kind of stuff. I mean, this guy has been doing it since day one. Out there with videos, he's been deplatformed, he's been in lawsuits, all of this kind of stuff. This guy got the fucking jab. Okay, now he got the jab, and then I was shocked. I was floored. And then I happened to see a couple of minutes of a video, and he said he got the, and I didn't see why he said he got the jab, the motivation, but I saw him rationalizing it as, now I have these antibodies in me from the jab, and I'm the biological laboratory, and we can take samples and they can't deny it and stuff. So in my opinion, he was subjected to mind control, which I felt. And if you go look at my weird warning woo video, I go into it there in about 15 minutes. I describe the situation. And I think he succumbed to the mind control. And all they do is they tweak your emotions with these gadgets of theirs. And they give you an emotion, and then your mind finds its own rationale.
Is this like voice of God technology? I don't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
Sort of, yeah. It's sort of, but it is sort of like that. It's a slightly different level because they're not trying to put words in your mind. They don't care. They've gotten more sophisticated. All they know, they know all they need to do is to cause certain emotions to occur. They can cause those emotions to occur biologically, and then you provide your own rationale for having that behavior change. Again, go back to read Sapolsky's book, Behave, and you'll see what's going on there, right? And so I think this individual succumbed. And it's like, okay, you got to be careful. That's why I put out this warning here. I felt it 3 times. There are people saying it's 5G and it's coming in through Starlink. And no, I don't believe that's the case. I think it's much more sophisticated than that. But I'm of the opinion that our supposed leaders, all of the politicos, the occupiers, are captured by this bug, and that they themselves don't understand how captured they are, and that they're really just basically non-thinking zombies. They're the ones that are really asleep and mind-controlled and doing these things that are antithetical to the human species on behalf of these other beings, and they are unaware of it. And I can see these alien things in their actions because I've had interactions with these aliens in hyperspace, and I know their behavior. And also because universe made me as I am. So in any event, though, we're at a very weird place here. We may even be able to actually have some of the occupiers crack and open up and turn, because they, if I'm correct, because they are not natively that way. They have just been themselves occupied.
Right. Yeah, I mean, eventually, I mean, it is possible. I mean, the most evil people can change. I mean, and maybe as they see some of the progressions of life getting worse and humanity getting worse, maybe they'll start to wake up to the realities of things that they helped to cause.
Okay, no, that's not true of the core people. Okay, now I did this. All right, so in the 1970s, when everything is getting computerized, I ran this thing called the Base Expectancy Study here in Washington State, and I did the coding part of it. All right, what we were doing, it's not like programming it, we were doing coding, where we took and we extracted 325 elements from every person that had been in prison in their record since the 1800s. Records were kept in this state, and we created this database of all of this activity and all these elements from every prisoner's life in and out of prison. And these were put into a database and analyzed. There were some very interesting conclusions that came out of this. And one of those conclusions was that there were 2 classes of child molesters, and that there were child molesters of, we could just say, low intelligence and convenience. And then there were child molesters that were pedophiles. That is, that they actually had a non-variable, non-variant attraction to children, so they will not change. So in my understanding, this won't happen. There will be the fringe part of them, guys, that will shed their allegiance to the ruling elite and the occupiers, and they may bust out. And some of them, I suspect, are in that position now where they're really questioning what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, most people should be questioning what's going on unless you know what's going on. And if you know what's going on and you're allowing it to happen, then there's something obviously wrong with you, whether it's mental issues or you have been captured in some capacity.
Yeah.
It's like you said, we're in a very pivotal historical time period. And I know that when we initially started recording, we were going to try to keep this. I'm trying to be respectful of your time, try to keep it to an hour.
No, I'm just waiting for something to occur. So I've got a few more minutes, I'm sure.
Okay. Just let me know whenever you know, I don't want to get rude here. I just wanted to make sure that
no worries.
I wanted most of my viewers and subscribers to basically kind of get an idea of what you've been researching and warning of potential possibilities. And I guess, what would be the most pertinent advice and information you would share for people for stuff that's going to be occurring that you are feeling like within the next 3 to 6 months, maybe 9 months, depending on how you're looking at the situation? Because I don't get to look at all your reports and look at how your research comes out.
Yeah, it's going to be really weird from January through next year. So my personal view at the moment is very much foreshortened. Right. There are certain things I'm trying to get done because I suspect that there will be major disruptions this year. The disruptions that may occur are not going to be permanent. All right. They're being allowed. So the devolution crowd must allow the normies to see. This is the real problem. You get people that, even Max Egan, I love the guy, right? He's a bald guy, so he's up there in my.
You guys look like you could be brothers, actually.
I know. Anyway,
I'd love to have you on a show together.
Oh, we just fight. Anyway, though, he like I say, I love the guy, but he was, he's really emotionally on edge, very stressful with the shit's going on in Australia and also here in the United States, and he was trying to urge the United States to basically throw off the occupiers and then come save Australia. And that must be done. But in order for us to throw off the occupiers here, we have to turn the normies. And here's the real problem, okay? It is, I've actually done this at a one-to-one level with a person, and it is almost impossible to convince a person they've been conned. Okay, it's almost impossible.
Then the cognitive dissonance kind of sets in place too, because you're like, did I just get duped? And you don't even want to let yourself think that could happen as well. So I get it. Right. Yeah.
So the easiest way to do that, having tried to describe this in a business environment, this guy was getting scammed and he just didn't believe me, and it was a failure. And I analyzed that. And so the next time it occurred, because I'm old, I've lived a lot of interesting things. Next time I came across that sort of circumstances, I just made the arrangements that were necessary for that individual to reveal himself in the con. I could see the con, I just made it possible for the victims to see it as well, and didn't bring it up or anything like that. I let them discover it on their own, because you cannot tell people this. You can't come up and tell them. You don't have the authority in their minds to be intruding at that level. You don't have the authority over the circumstances they think, to know what's going on. So it's one of those things where they must discover it themselves. And that's why this is so agonizing for all of us guys, all of us woo people, Max, Kerry Cassidy, all of these guys, right? This is why they're suffering so much, because they were there earlier in their lives. 40, 50 years ago, right? That's when they woke up. Yeah. And so what we have to do is we've got to wake up this giant mass of normies to the fact that they've been conned all their lives. And this is and the only way to do it, we can't tell them. If Trump came out and told everybody, they wouldn't accept it. Nobody would. And in fact, you'd get all those people and they'd get it all whipped up. And the next
especially from Trump.
Exactly.
Or the pillow guy or anybody in that camp.
You can't. And so, all right. So here's a couple of things. You're going to see weird stuff, right? You're going to see them trying all different kinds of stuff on both sides to overcome or reinforce this conning aspect. So you'll see people come on out and basically it turns out to be a nothing burger. And you'll think, okay, well, what was that all about? Well, that was to cause the other side to do something. So when the nothing burger about the PCAPs came out, the PCAPs, the people that were doing the conning, they were trying to get the other side to do something. So when the nothing burger about the PCAPs came out, the PCAPs, the people that were doing the conning, they were trying to get the other side to do something. So when the nothing burger about the PCAPs came out, That was not intended to do anything more than trigger a reaction in the occupiers. And what reaction did it trigger? Afghanistan. Okay, so so you're watching, it's like you're sitting on the beach, you spread out your lunch, you've got your baguette, you've split it open, you're putting mayonnaise on, it's a nice sunny day, the seagulls are sort of seeing you, but they haven't really descended on your picnic just yet, and you're out there looking at a naval battle, okay? Two giant destroyers separated by, let's see, you'd be able to see, say, 30 miles. Okay, if you were at a high enough point on a bluff on a beach, you'd be able to have a good view of, say, 30 miles of the ocean out there. And you're watching these two giant behemoths shoot ammo at each other. Boom, boom, boom. That's what our lives are going to be like for the next few months. And the booms are going to get bigger. And pretty soon the whole beach is going to be rattling. And pretty soon you will be joined by millions of people also watching. And that's when it's going to get really fun. Or is it going to be terrible? Okay, because we're going to have die-offs and all this kind of stuff. This is a war. People are going to die. But for me, the fun part is that as soon as I see the normies turn, I know that victory is ours. We just have to start walking and it's there. And then the next thing you know, there's no more occupiers. And then we can all sit around and say, okay, is Clif crazy or is there really a fucking bug up there?
Yeah, I definitely want to get into the extraterrestrials, the aliens, and some of the things you've talked about in past videos. I wanted to, and obviously, hopefully we could do that in another conversation. Regarding Afghanistan, is this all about handing over the natural resources to Russia and China?
No, that's
is it to get Biden out of office?
That's part of it. All of these things are part of it. Okay. So Russia had the resources. They didn't mine worth squat when they were there. You can't mine in Afghanistan easily. China won't be able to mine in Afghanistan easily. China is really the CCP empire, and they're going there to die. This is not as it is seen. Okay. So think about all these different kinds of, this is a secret war. There's spy versus spy. There's organizations of spy versus organizations of spy, all the way up and down. And so you're going to have all different kinds of battles and all different kinds of agendas that are going on. So, all right, so you got, umpty billions of dollars of weapons that were left there and are now in the hands of the Taliban and presumably shipping them off to China and Russia and stuff, right, for analysis and so on. And you've got the databases and stuff in the embassy that have been captured, and all the biometrics and all of the super spy gear that was in the embassies. Well, if we were to just look at the rifles, okay, modern military rifles, the goal of the modern infantry rifle that you're going to give to every one of your troops is that it should be first and foremost a sensor, and secondarily a rifle. Because in order to have an effective war, from the bug's viewpoint, it's got to control every aspect of everything. And so all militaries these days are following that model. They want to have real-time feeds and know how many rounds you've shot in what battle while you're actually shooting it, being beamed up through telemetry to satellites back down. So a
sensor would make it like a smart gun to feed information back as to what the gun is being utilized for?
What would it need to do that kind of thing? It would need to know when the trigger is pulled. Right? When you're doing that, you might as well put in something there to stop the trigger from being pulled. What else would it need? If it's going to be giving you battlefield information, it's got to have sensors for temperature, angle, all this kind of stuff, and GPS. So you know where they all are. What do modern trucks have? Low jack. What do airplanes, all this kind of shit have? So, okay, so at some point, at some level, all of this shit is tainted, so to speak, right? You want to find out how many Taliban you have? You dial up the database that goes to the satellite that's over Afghanistan, and it looks to how many of the vests that you left there are actually walking around and moving. Those vests have GPS sensors.
Okay.
So all of this kind of stuff has all these hidden layers in it.
It's interesting.
So we can't think of it as an absolute, it is an absolute debacle. And this is what is being used as part of the thing to grab a lot of the normies by the nuts and shake them around, right? So that they get that feeling, oh my God, we're going to have Afghanistan Taliban invading us, and look what Biden's doing and all of this kind of stuff. And so I'm doing everything I can to push that narrative, pointing out all those stupid things that the con artists are doing. And that's been my goal. And so I'm part of the self-organizing collectives. So the bug and his troops had no way of knowing they were also going to have to deal with me, as what they knew in a vague way that they would have to deal with a generalized grumbling, but they didn't know that there would be specific individuals that would tumble to what's going on and decide to play also, right? To get in on the thing also and form our own little guerrilla bands, just like in the first Revolutionary War with the people in South Carolina, North Carolina, Louisiana, living
like
in the
Minutemen, stuff to that effect.
Correct. So self-organizing collectives is the way that humans work. And we have hacker collectives and all of these kind of things. We got people sharing information, as in this video, and other normies wake up and they decide, well, I can play this game too. I'm going to go talk to Cousin Flo and tell her what an asshole Biden is, and he gets in a fight with Cousin Flo and so on. But nonetheless, that starts the whole process off. And, and telling people, no, don't take that shot. You're a fool and so on, right?
Yeah.
And so on this level of resistance, language changes before behavior changes. So all I know I have to do is to change the language. All I have to do is to be a nexus for people to think about new words and new relationships in order to get their mind and their emotions all tumbled up so that they don't get the overcast from the bug.
And I know you pointed out, making it very important that people need to focus on preparing our minds for what's ahead and what's about to occur. And once we're able to do that, I mean, are there other things that you would encourage people to do to prepare? Food, water.
Yeah, food, water, all
water
of that.
Abilities.
I don't think it'll
Particles.
go that far. We're going to have a collapse of the economic system, but not the economy. There's a difference. I don't know that we'll get down to actual barter, but I don't like the idea of keeping wealth in the banks, especially any national bank or any international bank. And I don't like keeping wealth in dollars, because the digital petrodollar is dying. And when the stock market crashes and there's a major banking failure, the way the law is written now, they can take your funds and make you a participant. So you need to understand that. Now, if you've only got a little money, a couple of, in a small bank account for month to month kind of stuff, it's not a big worry necessarily, right? Because they won't tap down at that level, because they can't disturb the normies too much and maintain the system. And they know that, and they're very stretched very thin. So this is a very delicate level of information war, mass information war, across all of our behaviors. And so there are parameters. So, if I had, like I say, if I was living from my bank account paying bills and stuff, I wouldn't be particularly worried. If I had retirement funds, which I do in a bank, I would be worried, right? I don't have mine in a bank, but if I had retirement funds, I would be very concerned about 401ks and banks and that kind of thing, just even on the inflation aspect, the hyperinflation alone.
Yeah.
Not to even think of a collapse in availability, the fact that it might become suddenly illiquid, even money markets and these kind of things. So we're at this very extreme point here, and those things will crash, but it's also necessary. So it's very terrible to say it this way, but the self-organizing collective that's fighting the bug and trying to get all the normies to wake up understands that it's going to be necessary to induce pain, not razor's edge kind of pain, right? We're not going there. This is the age of knowledge, but we're going to have knowledge can bring pain. So, if you knew that your brother did something horrible, you personally would feel emotional pain from just knowing that your brother was doing something horrid, right? Just the taint on you, just in your bloodline, brings that level of sensation.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to have that level of sensation as we are experiencing now. Everybody feels terrible about what's being done in Afghanistan on all these different levels, but on one top level, we feel a sympathetic vibration, a culpability for the situation with Biden. In other words, all of the people that voted for him are culpable. Even those of us that have objected to him and have fought the whole thing and it was all bogus and so on, we still have that feeling of culpability. It'll be very much stronger the stronger you are as a self-authentic, a self-actualizing person. Once you're captured, you don't care, right? Biden, that's why he's making jokes. His mind isn't there. But even Psaki, she's content not to even discuss it, right? because her mind is captured. So she does not have that sense of culpability or empathy or any of this. And so, but here's the issue. We're going to have to look at and examine real history and a lot of really evil things and terrible things. And so I've been cautioning people to know your limit. And so when I say prepare your mind, I'm not saying, get a mantra of I'm tough, I can take it, or anything like that. What I actually mean is look in your mind and your emotions, find out your weakest link there, and know when you are going to have to stop looking at what's going to be coming. All right. So you might be compelled to continually look at your phone and these horrid, evil images that are going to be pouring out. And it's not necessary. All that's necessary is that you get to that point where you know that this is factual and it's legit, and that in fact these people are telling you that this is that has what happened, and then you don't have to dwell on it, because they will have to do that repeatedly, continuously, because of the way that the news cycle has been ground into our brains. And so I can expect months of just horrid images and information coming out, yet more the next day, yet more the next day. And we have to, and this is what you and I are dealing with, and Max Egan and Kerry Cassidy, we have to feel and find a mechanism, and the normies that wake up, for continuing and having a regular good life and taking something from it during this process, okay? Because our goal is to stay sane and be there at the end to help rebuild and pick up and so on, right?
I had to do that. I had to restructure my life and make sure I wasn't overworking, spend enough time with people I love. Because I was getting burned out.
Yeah, and so today, even though I knew this was going on, I did something fun. There was a Biden voter stuck in the sand on the beach, and so I got my tow kit and went on down and hauled his ass out. It was cool. I like the engineering of it all, right? And it's like, oh, I'm going to have a good day from now on for the rest of this day, simply because I took that little bit of joy of what would have been like a normal thing to do, even though we're in the midst of a war, right?
That's good advice. It really is. And I don't want to keep you too much longer. I did want to ask you one last real question, and you don't have to go into a long explanation, but your thoughts on crypto, where we're at, where we could be, how it's going to be possibly a way for us to be able to bypass this fiat hyperinflation.
Yeah, it'll get us out. I think that the system of sound money is going to evolve on its own. There will be support from institutions, non-captured institutions, starting in January or February. The data that seemed to suggest that we would have a massive crash in the price of Bitcoin may be relating to what's going to be going on in the petrodollar. Okay, so imagine this situation. We now have, say, I don't know what it is, maybe Bitcoin's 50,000. Let's just make a nice, easy round number. Say it's 50,000. Okay. We may get to the point where in January, we get a 90% retracement, not in Bitcoin per se, but in the purchasing value of the asset you're weighting it against. So if you're going to weight it against any of the fiat currencies that are in any way tied to the petrodollar, you're going to get a wonky answer that will make no sense. So
right.
So I don't know. Maybe in January, instead of a crash of 90%, maybe we'll get a tenfold appreciation in digital dollars worth of Bitcoin, but it's only because the currency has crashed 90%. Does that make sense?
It does. And it makes me think about kind of like the precious metals, because you have the paper traded price, the spot price, and then you have what dealers actually sell it for. And there's a disconnect. Right. The dealers are like, we know that these commodities are worth more than what the pieces of paper are being traded for, and we're not going to sell it for the price that the pieces of paper are being traded for. You're going to have to pay a premium on it. So in that sense, it does make sense. And if we have any sort of stock market crash, I mean, like in March of 2020, they had to put the stop the trading for the day a couple times because of everything that occurred with what they're calling a white swan event with COVID.
Yeah.
And if you're going to shut down the stock market for any more than a day, and you're talking about something like back when they, what first happened with the creation of the Federal Reserve, all all that is really going to affect the cryptocurrency market. It's going to affect everything. And we can see that just from 2008, what occurred with the crash then, and how even gold and silver was affected. Right. And also we could see that in March of 2020 as well, when Bitcoin went down to like $3,900 or something to that effect.
This will be a weirdness, okay? Because we're going to encounter a situation where all of the world has been, basically what I'm describing is the end of the petrodollar as the global reserve currency. And it has many elements that are akin to the end of the pound sterling at the end of the British Empire. But because of modern communications and electronics, there's all this other stuff thrown in. But we might actually have a 90% or more crash in the value of the petrodollar, which is going to cause ripples throughout everywhere. It will seriously affect, for instance, the exchanges that are tied to banks. But it may not affect any other crypto exchange except in a positive way. You may have millions of people flooding into those crypto exchanges that are not attached to banks in various different means. Okay, so this is the weirdness that was described by the data. As we get closer to these things, I review the old data records I've got, and what it appears to show was that after the $600 silver and the great rise up to over 100,000 on the price of Bitcoin, that there was a disconnection. And previously I just discussed the disconnection as though we were going to have maybe a 90% correction like Bitcoin usually does. But this is not that. There will be no return to the old system at that point. So from January onward, if I look at the data a particular way, we are in fact building a wholly new system. And so who knows what we would use to then value Bitcoin. Will we be valuing Bitcoin against gold? Will we be valuing it against silver, against constitutional dollars that we might just start printing, against legal treasury coins? I just don't know.
Or start valuing everything in Bitcoin and Satoshis.
Correct. Well, Bitcoin,
but it's going to be like I need to go to the store and get $10 worth of gas, and it's going to cost me it would be 0.6 point zeros and a 1. But there would be terms for that. There's actually terms for that. So it would be like
it'll be actually a fraction of a
300 Satoshis.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that world.
Yeah, well, okay, so don't look forward to it too much because it's going to be very chaotic. Right? It'll take us a while to have effective systems. So you won't have plane travel in that world, right? And we're going to be trying to undo all of this stuff with the mask. You're going to have people dying of the vaccines. It's happening now. If you were to take the numbers of the bug-captured elite, they say they've got like 5 billion doses of vaccines out there. All right, I don't buy it. I know personally of 60,000 doses that were destroyed here in my local county because they left it out of the refrigerator and they had to pitch them. And that was just that was 10,000 vials in a little box because there were 6 doses to a vial, and so they just pitched it into a dumpster. So there were.
Do you happen to grab them by any chance?
No, Guy. Under the circumstances, this was way back when,
okay.
And I know about it. I was aware of it because I was shopping at a Safeway store that was nearby. I'd never carry my phone with me, so I don't even have that. And I was just not in a position to go over there, given the circumstances.
I was just curious.
Yeah, I should have thought about it. I never think about this shit. I never think about taking photos. Anyway, though, but I also know that they destroyed 15 million doses in New York. Okay, 15 million doses were returned, and then the paperwork was bad somehow, so they just decided to destroy them. So there's millions of doses that are going missing all the time that are not and they're within that 5 billion supposedly that have been created and handed out. So, but nonetheless, we're going to have a lot of people that are very ill now. We're starting to see the mainstream media people become ill that had taken the shot a few months ago. The way the shot works, every month after you take it for some considerable period of time, your risk of the blood clotting and stuff increases. And it has to do with this net negative change from a net negative charge that keeps the blood vessels repelling each other inside the plasma of your blood. And the vaccine changes them to a net positive charge, and they magnetize together into these long chains of clumped together platelets. And at some point they can't pass oxygen to you, by the way, when they're positively charged.
Oh, wow.
And when they go through your blood vessels, at some point they'll come to a capillary and not make it through there. And then you got a blood clot. And then it starts stacking up behind it and stacking up behind it. And that's what happens in your heart. That's why the Australian news guy with his inflammation, and you see what kind of a huge guy he is in my Twitter feed just this morning and or yesterday. No, there's just this morning, I think. Anyway, and it happened to him. He's got myocarditis. That's what this heart inflammation is.
Is that what this is?
That's him. Okay, and look at him, right? Robust, healthy, and so on. And now flat out. Okay, and it's happening to everybody and it's not rare. The extremely rare, no, it's really fucking common. It used to be 2 people per 100,000 had this, and now we're getting it in 2 people in a single day. One of them died in England.
Wow.
So anyway,
a lot of this is just being suppressed.
Yeah, here's the deal. If you get a shot and you die on the spot, if you die in one of those centers, and so I've seen videos of people that have gotten the shot and they could not get up out of the chair and they actually died in the chair or fell on the floor, right? Those individuals did not die of that shot.
Okay.
It's illegal. It's illegal. The FDA says you have to go 15 days and keel over before they'll allow you to say that you died from that shot. So
anybody who died in the first 14 days of getting the shot doesn't count towards it.
They're unvaccinated as far as the FDA is concerned. They died in an unvaccinated state.
This is like playing Monopoly with your big brother, and he just keeps changing the rules of the game, and you have no clue because you just started playing the game.
Right. Yeah, no, that's not a get out of jail card. That's you owe me $200.
Damn.
Yeah, exactly. See, so it's all against us, and all of this stuff has to be unraveled. So the normies have to appreciate what I just told you. They've got to get to the point where they understand what's going on with the vax and why all these people are dying and all of this sort of thing. When that occurs, we win. But this is an aggregation thing, so we got to get a lot of normies. So if you've been a hunter, you ever hunt?
I've hunted. I wouldn't call myself a hunter.
Okay. All right. Well, if you go out and you follow herds, I did this with my dad in Alaska when I was a little kid, right? And that we went out with the tribal people and we would hunt caribou. And I was just along for the ride. I couldn't even hold a weapon. But there comes a point where the outer fringe of the herd, and I'm talking when I saw them, there were maybe 40,000 individual caribou in this herd. And it was just magnificent. And the smell, you could smell them for miles away. Anyway, there comes to a point where they become aware of you. And it takes a long time for that. There's a few individuals that seem to become aware of you sitting up on the hill there, the tribal people leaning over, they ultimately your smell, they do all kinds of stuff to keep their smell out and all of this kind of stuff, right? But at some point, the herd becomes aware. And when the herd turns, it is the most incredible sight you've ever seen, because animals that are right next to you, you're up on a hill looking down on them, and the whole valley is filled with them. And animals that are right here suddenly bolt to the other side of the valley. But what is really fantastic about that is in that same instant, there are animals on the other side of the valley also bolting in that same direction up those hills. So it sparks across their minds and the whole herd just moves. There's dust. In this case, there was snow and ice and destroyed vegetation and everything as they just took off.
Wow.
And that's what is going to happen. Now, it destroys the landscape. And so we're going to have a lot of rebuilding to do after this herd turns. Bear in mind, no institution will remain unchanged. From DMV through schools, through any system you deal with, it will be changed in the process of these next few years. It may not exist in the future. We may not have driver's license in the future. It may not be necessary.
Right.
All different kinds of things are going to occur. So I've got to go, Guy, but
I appreciate it, Uncle Cliff. Do you have any, I did some screen sharing. Do you have anything you wanted to share, promote?
No, I'm not trying to pimp anything. The Pure Sleep, I just have it out there for all the people that are going to be suffering, not being able to sleep at night and feeling bad when they wake up. The beauty of the Pure Sleep is that if you mix it with milk, you get the fats around the nerves in your brain. And the material in there makes you feel good the next morning when you wake up and you want to go out and take out on that day. Plus, it provides you with the human growth hormone to repair your body tissues at night. That's how I've
Cool.
been able to come back to 170 pounds. And I'm going to try and work back up to my peak of about 174.
Awesome. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I really honestly appreciate your time. If you can hold on just 1 second, I'm just going to wrap this up and stop recording. Ladies and gentlemen, going to have links down below for everything I just mentioned. Please, if you're not familiar with Clif High's work, check out his YouTube channel, his BitChute channel, his webpage, check out Pure Sleep, check out JP from BeyondMystic's conversations with Uncle Clif as well. If this is your first time watching in my videos, make sure you subscribe to my channels, follow me on my social media. And as always, I encourage you to be the change by practicing change.